back to business opportunities, I mean, one of the most important initiatives at the moment, especially now that the US and the G7 is trying to do an alternate model of, is the Belt and Road Initiative. So from your perspective, I know this has been around for quite a while, but still it's been changing and adapting to the situation quite frequently. So for the moment that we're speaking now, where are the opportunities and where are the challenges of this initiative? And I'm talking for example, EU companies. What are the opportunities and challenges for EU companies to participate in the Belt and Road Initiative? Does it make sense at all, or is it only a political instrument? What are your insights on that?
Well, I'll start perhaps by talking a little bit about the Belt and Road Initiative itself to help our listeners understand how I view it. They might agree or disagree with me, but this is at least how I've sort of shaped my understanding of it over the years. This is a loose structure. Some people call it a strategy. Some people call it a project. The official name is Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative. That's something that the Chinese side usually insists on. In my estimation, this is an elastic sort of structure or an elastic idea. When it was announced in 2013, on day one, the projects that were incorporated into the initiatives existed before the Belt and Road. What happened is they were incorporated into something new. And then since then, of course, there's been new projects that actually started under the initiative. But since then, recently, for instance, we've seen the Digital Health Road, the Digital Silk Road, the Health Silk Road. We've seen all of these new structures that emerge in the case of the 16+1 that I spoke about in Central and Eastern Europe. It's sort of merged with this initiative as well, because a lot of the Belt and Road agreements, in terms of, for instance, the MOUs, they were signed to the 16+1. So are these two separate channels, or is this the Belt and Road sort of taking the 16+1 in? It's difficult to sort of specify what exactly it is. The way that it emerged, in my view, was that China had to do something on the global stage. And when I say do something, that's literally what I mean. For many years, China kept growing economically. And if we look at the foreign policy debates, for instance, there were all of these criticisms that China keeps making money and does nothing in terms of international politics. So essentially, they came up with the idea of setting up the BRI. And then the first 4 years of the BRI were this just rapid expansion, for instance, overseas lending for that the Chinese institutions did at the time. Increased, I think it was something like from 40 billion to about 70 billion US dollars in the first 4 years. So it almost doubled. If you look at the MOFCOM numbers, the numbers from the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, the overseas contracts that were signed, I think doubled as well in this sort of initial period. Now, after 2017, it seems to me that this is the moment when the Chinese financial commitment to the initiative started to slow down a bit. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, there started to be some pushback from the West and in some places internationally. Second of all, and I think most importantly here, though, at the same time, China started to realize that because it invested too fast and in too many places, it had to be more careful with its money, because sometimes you just can't get it back. And you know, everyone understands that, you know, this is some of this money is sort of intended to be spent, but at the same time, how much can you sort of just lose or throw into a black hole? So you had these two trends, and since then the BRI started to incorporate projects more carefully, I would say.
Okay.
Now, before, China's development was a lot more simply about pushing Chinese products abroad. And then with the BRI now, we've had this more organized, and some people would say strategic expansion and penetration into international markets. And that's a part of where the infrastructure comes in as well. The infrastructure that Chinese companies are building is not just simply for itself. It's also something that would sustain and help to boost international trade. The development of China is essentially built on international trade in a relatively peaceful global environment. So this is a part of what the BRI here is sustaining. Now, of course, there's also the technology and the digital aspect more recently, where China is both acquiring technology abroad and developing its own technology. But overall, the success of this initiative is something that I think perhaps even its own architects didn't expect to happen so fast. It was, I mean, I think it was surprising to everybody that the world sort of took it on with as much excitement. And to me, this says that there is a demand in the world for this. There is a demand for somebody who stands up with some sort of vision for things. The US has been backing down on this now during Trump's time, and now with the Biden administration, we don't really know yet what's this new vision that it has, and if it has any vision. The EU is focused on its regional problems and its internal sort of challenges. Russia doesn't have any capacity to engage beyond its own region. The developing world is, of course, a whole different story. So somebody needs to propose something globally. And the fact that a lot of countries welcomed it tells me that it's something that they see themselves benefiting from. Now, there's criticisms of...
No,
go
just
ahead.
because it fits into what you were saying. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that the Belt and Road Initiative is also, like, from the ideological point of view and from the symbolic point of view, also so welcomed at the moment because it's inherently non-polar. It is a road. And it crosses a lot of the countries between the former poles, right? So you have China and the European Union and the US, the US not being part of it, and Canada neither, and Australia neither. So it is inherently not polar. Of course, the major, I mean, at the end, the idea behind it is, of course, to enhance the financial sums that China gets from that, or also the international reputation, but it is inherently the opposite of what the US and the EU are doing at the moment with the sanctions, and we will talk about that later. But I find that symbolically, this road approach is, maybe that is also why it's so successful. But that's
this is
sorry.
A part of this, I think, a wide acceptance for this, and a part of the reason for Chinese diplomacy's success is the respect for national sovereignty that's entrenched in it. And any developing country, I think that in the West there is a bit of a bubble where people have just ignored for the longest time the actual voices of the developing world, partly because a lot of these people, it's including the academics and the state leaders there, don't have the platforms to speak up and explain their vision, and they haven't been as important economically. The developing world is made up of many new states or former colonial or semi-colonial states. These states gained their full independence on paper. Again, kind of their foreign policy could be influenced by many actors, but on paper they gained their independence very recently in terms of the broader historical picture. They don't want to lose it. And this is one of the reasons why it's very hard also to integrate them. If you look at integration projects in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, they start and fail, and it goes into a vicious cycle because nobody wants to give up their sovereignty. They just got it. And the fact that China respects it is something that appeals to them. And it also appeals to China's own sort of historical experience as well, because China went through the so-called century of humiliation as well. So it is, in a way, of course, it's an ancient sort of a country, but it's also there's a new structure here that just gained its sort of modern style sovereignty. So of course this is appealing. And I don't see also the some of the points of the critical voices that this initiative will benefit China. Well, of course it will benefit China. I mean, China is investing in it. If you're investing in something, would you not like this thing to benefit you? This is not a charity structure. This is international politics. Are the US initiatives not benefiting the US? What about the World Bank and the IMF and the conditionalities of the loans there? This, and also not just them, you look at other institutions, for example, Brazil's Regional Development Bank for Latin America, it literally has conditionalities that Brazilian companies have to complete the projects. It does not consider other types of projects that are not completed by Brazilian companies. So in that sense, the Belt and Road is actually more looser than a lot of these existing structures. And to me, I don't see the criticism there that people leverage against it. This is what it should be. The person who invests in it should have some benefit from this.
But in a sustainable way, by also enabling the countries along the road to get benefits as well, and to further the integration between them. So I think I agree with you that the project is symbolically and politically very, very like interesting, and it's a great platform. And to be honest, it's the only platform that I am seeing at the moment that gives this opportunity at all. All the others are highly polarized and are not available to many developing countries, for example. So maybe that's also why the Chinese COVID diplomacy was so successful under this umbrella term. They also termed it the health Silk Road, because developing countries they got something and they were included in this distribution network, whereas from the other, like European Union or whatever, northern countries or developed countries, they were more or less like ignored. So I share your view on that.
On the health road is something that in the West, there hasn't been a lot of competition for many hundreds of years in the developing world, and other sort of actors that could offer the same types of, for instance, new technology or know-how or investment there. This is something that because of the colonial sort of dominance of Europe, it's something that people in the West haven't even considered and thought about for the longest time. When I say people, I mean the leadership of the West. So this is something that if they don't change it, they will find themselves in a very difficult situation in terms of exerting global influence. But the health road is also strategically a very good move. First, because it's clearly beneficial to the recipient countries. Secondly, because it is good diplomacy, which doesn't cost that much compared to, for instance, infrastructure projects. Third, because this is something that perhaps a lot of people don't think as much about, but China has learned a lot from the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union had a free healthcare system. And if you speak to people in Eastern Europe, not all of them, but maybe half of the people there have a little bit of nostalgia about the free healthcare system. And this is something that China understands very well. Now, in terms of health, the health system in China domestically, there are a lot of challenges, but it is still guided politically under an ideology that's inspired by this idea of healthcare and education as these broadly available public goods. And this is, I think, something that's a part of Chinese thinking. I think the same will happen with education down the line. If Chinese universities continue to rise up the rankings, there you will see a lot of affordable Chinese university degrees worldwide. They might not reach sort of Harvard level, quote unquote, quality that quickly, but they will be of very good quality for the price that they cost, or there will be a lot of scholarships available for them. This is something that's entrenched in the sources of inspiration for China's current not just ideology, but just policy directions in pragmatic terms, healthcare and education. And I think this will spill over globally sooner or later.
Okay. Thank you very much for that insight.